Good afternoon, friends. I am Captain Chris of Church Army. I'm actually AEP, an Associate Evangelist, and it's my pleasure to introduce to you this series called Fireside Chats. We're going to be doing so many interesting things. We're going to have conversations with people who work in the church and who have been influenced so mightily by Church Army. We want to share their stories with you. Today, our conversation, headed by our Deaconess Elaine Cunningham, today we interview Father Khan Honeyghan, and he's going to be telling us about his interaction with Church Army sisters. Specifically, he will tell you about his interaction with Sister Molly Walton, Sister Phyllis Thomas, and Sister Norma Thompson, and the effect that they had on his life and where he is now today in his vocation because of their interaction. So sit back, listen, and please feel free to reach out to us if you know somebody who has been influenced by Church Army. Please reach out to us and let us know the stories you want us to tell. This is about Church Army and how Church Army has influenced the community that you are part of. I look forward to hearing from you. Enjoy today, the first in the series, and expect to see a lot more.
Good evening, everyone. Welcome to our Fireside Chats. This afternoon, we have with us Father Khan Honeyghan. And I know you're all saying, what a handsome young man this is. And why is it he has selected this path to serve? So Father Khan will be telling us this afternoon about some of his adventures in early life and how that has facilitated his final decision to become a minister, a priest in God's church. So Father, good afternoon.
Good afternoon.
And I would love if you could tell us a little bit about your early years in the cool hills of Manchester.
I think I'm the first of three, and I'd love to believe I was a well-behaved young man at times. I had a love for sports and anything that I could use my hands. So I've always loved the arts and also loved anything technical oriented. One of the first technical subjects that I did and was just excelling was auto mechanics. So I used to be able to, repair the cars or change the oil. I would do that for my mother. But my history classes and English and all those, the grades were really not as good. My mother was very, very patient with me and pushed to a great extent. But my church life is where I got to have quite a bit of fun. I enjoyed youth fellowship, and Sister Phyllis is at the heart of youth fellowship life and the many activities that we did at church. Those activities still resonate with me today.
I noticed, Father, that you spoke about your early years and then you jumped into high school. But one of the things I want to ask you is, what were you known for at high school? Were you known for being a straight-laced person? Was there any adventure?
Oh Lord, I got into trouble, yes. I got into one or two trouble. I was always with the boys, and because I love the technical subjects, the schools had a way of putting, the troublesome boys in the technical field. And I didn't get into the technical field because I was in trouble necessarily. I just loved to use my hands. So after a while, of course, those boys and yourself become friends. And yes, more trouble ensued.
Okay, and we won't ask you what was the nature of that trouble because that would be too much to bear.
Yeah.
But I like the fact that you mentioned fun with church, because some of us feel that church is this place that you have to be so straight that you're going to suffocate. So tell us a little bit more about Sister Phyllis and your youth fellowship groups, and what were some of the activities you did?
I must be honest that I didn't see it as fun at first. It was on the insistence of my mother. With my mother, church wasn't an option. You had to go to church. And she believed that we should all be involved in some way, shape, or form. And the youth fellowship, coming out of Sunday school, youth fellowship was that space. Eventually bonding with the children at youth fellowship groups, getting to know each other. And having activities like we had our own camps. We had, Sister Phyllis was really good with, she had a love for plays. And in Mandeville, we don't have some of the playhouses that you have in Kingston. So, you know, Sister Phyllis brought the opportunity for us to be a part of a play, and also to use it as a fundraising, to raise funds for the youth at church. And those moments of dancing on stage, you know, being a part of the scenes, being behind the scenes as well, making some of the prompts for the scene, the rooms, being able to learn how to work on stage, how to project your voice, all that was very, it was fun. You were learning at the same time and having fun with each other, but at the same token, you were also learning the Bible, because believe it or not, some of us did not know some of those biblical stories and know the details, but acting it out on stage made it come home, made it come alive for you, especially when you had to learn the lines of certain characters of the story.
That's very interesting. That's a good way to study scripture.
Yeah.
And it stays with you. I remember Canon Jones of blessed memory. That was one way he used, one tool he used to help our young people to understand scripture. And he would go a bit further, that he would also explain to you some doctrine that emanated from the place. So that's good. But while you were with Sister Phyllis, did you get a sense of awe about her? Did you learn anything about her spirituality as you interfaced with her as a younger man? Because you still say you're young.
Over time, Sister Phyllis was a dominant person in the youth fellowship. She's the one that led youth fellowship, but she always tried to groom persons to take charge. And over the years, I didn't really appreciate Sister Phyllis then, because I couldn't understand. She was a very quiet but powerful mind. She would always challenge you intellectually to think deeply. She had her tone was somewhat monotonous, so sometimes it was difficult to sit and listen to her, but at the same time, don't let that fool you. Her words would somehow leave a mark on you that weeks after you'd hear her voice and what she said playing over and over in your head. She was a disciplinarian. She was very strict, but she did understand the importance of mentoring us. And of course, we gave her a lot of hard times, but she still did not give up. In my latter youthful life, when I was going into young adult stage, that's when I got to know even more of Sister Phyllis. I got to understand her a little differently. She became a mentor to me. She encouraged me to be on the church's committee. And this is where Sister Phyllis started to go even deeper with her mentorship. She encouraged me to speak my mind, something I was very afraid of doing at the church committee level. And she said, no, you have a voice, you should speak. And even if people disagree with you, you should speak. So she had this spirit about her that she was always ready to share her thoughts and her views, especially if she didn't agree. And she would encourage you as a young person to do likewise. And she would always push and push for us as young persons to be a part of the church, to be seen and to be heard. Something that was not necessarily the custom at the time. We were to be seen but not heard. And Sister Phyllis was always pushing us to go beyond that.
That's very commendable, and I can actually see her operating that role as well. The fact that she encouraged and facilitated your development to speak, and for persons to understand that within the church all ideas should contend,
Yes.
and there is no necessarily one right way. How has that influenced you today as your pastor?
Yes, it has definitely shaped me to respect people's views and to listen. Sister Phyllis, that was her personality. She listened to you. And she, as I said, she's very intellectual. She was a very brilliant mind. And she would spend the time to, ask you questions about your own views. And, allow you to recognize in your own views where you are going off on a tangent, where you're going off wrong. And she wouldn't be quick to just correct you and say rubbish and push you aside. She would go through that slow process of asking you and helping you to explore your views some more. That's something I'm hoping to hone. I want to get there, that kind of maturity. But I've definitely learned the value of listening. And again, Sister Phyllis, her demeanor, her way of life, she embodies for me what I've seen in Roman Catholics in forms of nuns. She was like a nun to me. A deep spiritual woman, very knowledgeable, very kind, very soft-spoken, and yet deep, very deep. And each time you had a conversation with her, you left feeling richer for it.
It's very positive. And as I asked earlier, you said that you learned some things from Sister Phyllis and you hope to hone that in your own ministry. But just where you are now, are you able to identify any episode or scenario where you can see there a direct correlation between Sister Phyllis's example and how you're practicing?
Oh yes, anti-vaxxers. Need I say any more? And even in Bible study too, the fundamentalist view that everything you read in the Bible, you just take it at face value and it is as is. When you have persons in the congregation who have had higher level education, so the mother church, you'll find a lot of those persons, but the rural churches, you'll find the opposite. And you have to be patient. I remember one instance when I went to Brandon Hill, just coming to St. Jude's Cure, and I was teaching in the sermon. I was trying to teach more than preach to the persons in those communities because they really want to learn more and they want to interject and ask you questions. And you have to get used to that. That's quite fine. And that was also Sister Phyllis's way of doing things with us as youth. Not just to preach to us, but to have conversations with us. And one lady, I was explaining to them that Jerusalem is still a real place. That you can literally take a plane and fly to Jerusalem. And for that lady, it sounded like blasphemy. How dare you say such a thing? Jerusalem is, it's an ancient, it's a place in the sky. It's a mystical place where holy people go to live. It's not a place here on earth. And I had to allow her to speak. And I said, okay, I'm going to come back another day and work this through with you. And to be patient and not just to be abrupt and rude or brash with persons. And to learn that persons are on a journey. And just as Sister Phyllis was very patient with us as youth, and she'd slowly carry you a step further each time you had a conversation with her. And I really value that approach.
Sister Phyllis made a significant contribution to the church army and to the church.
Yes.
And my image of the church army dates way back to the late 50s into the 60s, early 60s. Names like Captain Cousins and Roy Wilson. And for me, those church army means evangelism. How do you see, or how have you reflected on Sister Phyllis's approach to the young people and the concept of evangelism? Do you see any correlation between those two?
Sister Phyllis was a lover of music. She had a guitar that she would play, and she would use it in any shape or form. She taught us a lot of songs that you would not learn in church. You would never hear those songs being played in Eucharistic service. She'd use music to help you understand some deeper spiritual knowledge. She would use the arts. As I said, she loved the plays. She would use the experience of camp, where you would learn quite a lot about how to manage your environment when you're at camp, how to keep your environment clean. And all those little disciplines she would definitely teach you in so many ways. And so her evangelism was not necessarily the one that you would go to a particular place and make the most noise right there. She did do some of that. But what I saw, for me, my experience was that she groomed you gradually. So much so that our youth group, on our own, we decided that we're going to go out into the streets of Mandeville and bring food to those homeless persons. And we came up with that initiative, and she gave us her blessing, and that was the kind of way she would encourage you to do something meaningful. Not necessarily just to go out and spread the word, but do something that has an impact. Those are the kinds of things that she would groom us for.
So there are some persons who feel that evangelism is just going to preach at one place one night and people come up and so on. But you're telling us that Sister Phyllis's ministry included much more than that. Right. She was really about investing in people's lives.
Yes.
And I know that young people in particular, that was her priority.
Yes.
And I just wondered further if you wanted to say something a little more about Church Army and how it has influenced you. Yes, we have spoken about Sister Phyllis, but the wider Church Army. And would you recommend anybody to become a member of the Church Army?
I would. My spiritual upbringing, yes, I could definitely call my mother. But the other woman who was instrumental was Sister Phyllis. And I can't leave out Sister Norma, because Sister Phyllis and Sister Norma were bosom buddies, and they came to the same church. And all my life I grew up knowing Sister Phyllis and Sister Norma. Sister Phyllis and I had a different relationship. I didn't get to know Sister Norma that much because my brother knew her more than I did, because he went to Church Teachers College. And so Rory knew Sister Norma more than I did. But I will say this, as a young man in church, the sermons that Sister Norma preached were the ones that I could understand and resonate. And I would love to hear when Sister Norma is going to preach. It's like, okay, finally, there's a sermon for me that I could understand. And Sister Norma would always communicate in a way that I could understand. And somehow I just couldn't understand when sometimes the priest, and most times when the priest went up to preach, I didn't understand. Bishop Moore was one of the only ones, because he would crack a joke before he preached, and sometimes I got the joke, but the rest of it lost me. So the Church Army women were the ones who were instrumental in shaping my faith and my understanding of church, and shaping my spirituality. I literally was formed by their hands, and I was inspired by them. I saw ministry, I saw the vibrancy of church through them. My brother became a server, and so he got to see the other side of church. But all that I knew came through Church Army sisters. And again, I started out school at a Roman Catholic institution. I saw these sisters as nuns. spiritual women, deeply rooted in their faith. And from them, I learned so much. And it is not coincidental that even my mother wanted to be a deaconess. And because myself and my siblings were in the picture, it made it difficult for her to join. But those kinds of devotion from these women are what formed me. So when I speak French, sometimes people think I'm on the bandwagon when I say that women should be in ministry. It's not a bandwagon thing. For me, it was my reality. These women were the ones who formed my spirituality, who mentored me and ushered me into the church.
I think that's very commendable. And how are you in your parish encouraging members of your parish to become part of the Church Army Associate Evangelist? Because I gather now that's an arm that's growing in the church, and as a matter of fact, I think there's a large number of persons who are in that organization, in that area of service, and we have it has eclipsed the full-time ministry at UTC. Have you thought about any kind of systematic way of encouraging persons to be a part of that?
Yes, I am, like Sister Phyllis, I'm moving with quite a few young ladies at this moment in time.
Father Khan, sorry, can you clarify that? Because, if persons might feel, I will take care of my swan sister. So, could you just say that again for us in very clear and unambiguous terms?
We have young men in church, but I do find the young ladies are definitely responsive. Their sense of their spirituality, their sense of the world, they are interested in deeper service. And those young women, I am hoping and praying that one of them will consider ministry in any shape or form. The young men, I'm still working on them because I don't want to leave out the men any at all, and they're very much needed at this point in time. But definitely there are some women who are under my stewardship at the moment in the cure. There are definitely one and two. There's one so far that is a part of the Church Army Evangelist program, Associate Evangelist program. But I know there are others to come. It's just the timing, the right time.
So there are a number of persons who will be seeing this interview, this conversation that we're having at the fireside. We're not very formal, but we're having this conversation. What would you say to the young men, even those who are in this room, about serving full-time?
It is life-changing, it is important, it makes your life richer. You will become a different man, and you will not be worse off for it. And not to worry, God does provide, God will provide, God always provides. Just trust in the Lord, and if you're feeling that tug, if you have that question, don't turn away, just say yes. Allow God to guide you all the way through. And I am a testimony of that. I could not see myself becoming a priest. I never accepted it until it happened. But what brought me this far is that I trusted God. I just said, God, I trust you, and I was going to take it one step at a time. And here I am today. Yes.
So Father, one last question I'm going to ask. And the question is, if you could describe the contribution of the Church Army to your life, your spiritual life, to the life of your family, what one or two words would you use to describe?
One, vibrancy in the spirit.
Okay.
Vibrancy in the spirit. Yes, I talk about Sister Phyllis, but Church Army in a whole, Sister Molly. I had a good relationship with her in Kingston Parish Church. And Sister Molly also impacted ministry for me and brought vibrancy and those memories of going out into the inner city communities. And those things resonated with me because Sister Phyllis had already planted the seed. So it's, Sister Norma and all these women, and again, it just so happened to be women, because you have men in church army too, but from my experience, it was these church army women who made ministry come alive and exciting. And ministry is not a dull thing, it's on the go, it's vibrant. And we shouldn't kill that spirit.
Thank you, Father Khan.
Yeah.
Because I think sometimes we fail to recognize that ministry is dynamic.
Yes, it is.
And it is not set in concrete.
Yeah.
And it Jesus himself, in speaking to his hearers and followers, he used things that were relevant to the day.
Yes.
And made it come alive. And I think that the church army, many of the church army officers have done that.
Yes.
They have done that. They have worked in specialized ministries, and they have really made, I like the word used, vibrant.
Yes.
I remember Sister Molly and her puppet show. I never forget that.
Yes.
I mean, I think that was the first time I seen a puppet show in the church in Jamaica.
Yes.
I've seen it elsewhere.
Yes.
But for her to come up with that idea, and I remember my sons being involved in that ministry, and it was just something, especially the younger one who is not overly enthusiastic about church. He was involved. She got him to work with her in the puppet ministry. So we want to thank God for the work of the church army, and we really want to hope that this organization that has impacted so many young people will continue to work for God's glory. So thank you very much, Father Khan, and thank you all for listening. Have a good afternoon. Go for your tea now by the fireside.